It often takes a long time for young children to develop a sense of quantities and relationships. There are several ways that as a teacher you can get some indication about how meaningful numbers are for your students. One way is to gain insight into the child's sense of number by asking them to estimate before counting a group of objects. When asked to estimate, students will often say whatever number comes to mind because they have not had enough experiences to make a reasonable estimate. For example, you can tell that they are just saying any number because they often do so without looking at the objects. When children count without paying attention to their estimate, it means that number at this point is not very meaningful for them. Children who have mastered this developmental milestone will be thinking about their estimate while they are counting. When they get to the end or close to their estimate, they will often comment about a relationship between their findings and the actual estimate they made. So, to sum up, children who have mastered this critical learning phase realize when they have counted past or won't even reach their estimate. Thinking about kindergarten curriculum, this is not an area that you would spend a lot of time or energy around, but it is an exception for young students, and it's worth noting when you really want to dig deeper and gain more insight about the meaningfulness of number for students. For the beginning counter, it will be impressive if they are able to react to their estimate. As they develop meaning for numbers, they will adjust their estimate for smaller numbers. Children will develop more meaning for numbers and their relationships. After many experiences, they will change their mind and make closer estimates while they're accounting because they have more information. So children who understand this critical learning phase change their mind and make closer estimates when they are counting because they have more information in which to base their estimate. And again, this is not an area that you would spend a lot of energy and time around in kindergarten, but it is worth noting. So now we're going to take an opportunity for you to reflect on what we've discussed in regards to the counting object critical learning phases. How would you complete this sentence? Counting objects is like a mountain, umbrella, or house. So the next part in our counting continuum is knowing one more or one less. A long-range goal for children is to learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide without having to count each item. This is the first step in knowing without counting. This will become a key idea when working with addition and subtraction. Children typically learn one more before they learn one less. The size of the number should also be taken into consideration. Young children who are learning to count do not trust numbers enough to believe that it is possible to know how many there will be before they count. Once they realize that one more is the same as what number comes next in the number pattern, they will become proficient with this critical learning phase. Learning how to tell one less is more difficult for students because it's harder for them to think about what came before. The one less pattern is more difficult to learn. So children who understand this critical learning phase trust that they know how many without counting and know the required number in the one less number sequence. We can tell the numbers are not meaningful for children when they start using a sequence that does not make sense. This really shows up when children are taking one away and the sequence does not follow other familiar patterns. This means the child will have to count each time to find out how many are left or use another counting pattern even if it doesn't make sense. When children become aware that they do not know one less and recount to find out, they are operating at a higher level. Children who have mastered this critical learning phase will catch themselves if they slip into a number pattern that does not work in the situation. If knowing one more is to become a useful tool for children, they need to be able to tell how many when one more is added to any number within the range they're working with. So when children develop this ability as numbers, if knowing one more is to become a useful tool for children, they need to be able to tell how many when one more is added to any number within the range of numbers they're working with. Children who understand the critical learning phase of one less without counting numbers when they're presented out of sequence If knowing one more is to become a useful tool for children, they need to be able to tell how many when one more is added to any number within the range of numbers they are working with. And the same would go for the critical learning phase of one less. So thinking about the video and what you saw with the student, I want you to think about what counting method did the student use in this video? How was the student able to track the items that he was counting? And which critical learning phase or phases has this student not yet mastered or has mastered?